should I wear my pins? I'll just show them to you. I don't feel like putting these on. These are them. They were the pre-order bonus. I don't know if that was a good shot. Hopefully you guys got it. I don't know if it's too much glare. It's just a pin of Zelda and Link. Zelda has the little torch when they're exploring the underground, and Link has his fancy little bunny dragon arm. Anyways, hello. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I talk about video games when I can. There is no release schedule, and I think that's actually part of the fun. If you are part of the 80% of my viewership that watches my stuff but isn't subscribed, can you please? It would be so sweet. And it's free. And it's a nice thing to do for me today. Have you done anything nice today? Have you considered that? So today we're talking about long-awaited Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sequel, Tears of the Kingdom. There was a lot of debate over whether or not this entry from Nintendo was worth $90. It was really good, and I think I got my money's worth. I don't know. I equate the value of a game based on like how many hours I enjoy versus the price point. So, for example, this game cost $90 and I played for about 70 hours. So that means like each hour of my enjoyment cost like $1 and some change. Like, I think that's worth it for a good experience, right? I feel like I'm settling well into a format where I talk about just my general thoughts and feelings about a game. And then I have a spoiler heavy plot synopsis. I have my recommendations on how I would fix the game. I have a discussion on side content, and then I wrap it up. This video is going to follow that structure. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch the plot synopsis part. It will be timestamped. Do not enter. It is dangerous to go alone. That is for the old people in the audience. Overall, I think Tears of the Kingdom is much better than Breath of the Wild. I don't know if that's a hot take. I haven't been really scanning for opinions on the internet. I found the story in Tears of the Kingdom to be extremely compelling. Compared to Breath of the Wild, I thought Breath of the Wild narratively was really boring. I think the game itself is great. And I mean, obviously, it spawned a bunch of clones for a reason. The game that they landed on with Breath of the Wild was extremely successful, and rightfully so. I think that game is incredible. But I think its shortcomings are that the plot is irrelevant. I was really hooked on the story of Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I was so excited to be constantly moving on to the next thing, going to the next place, figuring out what's happening there. Just in general, for all the side stuff that doesn't have to do with the main story, I was excited to go encounter those people and see what they're up against. And then also following the main story, trying to piece together what's going on in little bite-sized chunks along the way. It was thrilling. I know I already said I am going to critique the plot, but if you're looking for a time travel, paradox, plot hole poking video, this just isn't it. I don't really care about that stuff. I think it's valid, and I think it's rational. Like, I'm not saying anybody is wrong for having the opinion that the continuity of Tears of the Kingdom doesn't necessarily make sense with Breath of the Wild. I'm just letting you know that I'm not tackling that. Overall, the gameplay is great. The premise is fascinating. I like that this game offers a new take on something that we're already familiar with. I think it also makes it much easier to just dive into the world because you know how this Hyrule, how this continent feels. Like, you just know what you're doing. So I just found it a lot more comfortable to dive in headfirst. Also, just a fun note, for a chunk of this game, mostly while I was exploring like the Northeast Goron region, Elden Volcano, in that area, Death Mountain. Fake fan. I was listening to the Paris Hilton autobiography, and it's very good. Trigger warning for a lot of abusive situations, if you choose to read it or listen to it. It was pretty uncomfortable in a lot of spots, but I thought it was just great. Lots of good advice in that book. You're not lucky to be at the party is lucky to have you. That's the thesis statement of the book. A little too much talk about NFTs though. I didn't love that. But if we think about it, Zelda is like Paris in a lot of ways. I'm just going to let you sit with that. Moving on to the story. This is the spoiler part. This is the spoiler part of the video. If you choose to watch it, it's at your own risk. I will not be held liable or at fault for any mistakes that you make in being here. Structurally, the story is very similar to Breath of the Wild, at least in like the first 60-ish% of the game. You still have to go to each corner of the map and figure out what's going on in each major race's village. The Rito are dealing with a relentless winter. The Zora's waters are being flooded with poisonous sludge. The Gerudo are facing off with zombie bug-like skeleton monsters called Gibdo. And there's this huge sandstorm that makes it really difficult to traverse the desert. And the Goron are doing drugs. Their food source has been poisoned. The rocks are not safe to eat because it's causing adults to become addicted and stop being productive members of Goron society, but it has no effect on children or the elderly. We open with Link and Zelda exploring these tunnels underneath the castle, which have remnants of the ancient Zonai race. In my Tears of the Kingdom predictions bingo video, I falsely attributed them to being like dragon humanoids, but they are more rabbit and kind of dog-like. Zelda comes across these detailed wall carvings, which show the imprisoning war, which happened near the founding of the Kingdom of Hyrule, and show Ganon, Ganondorf. I'm going to be using those two names interchangeably in this video. Anyways, Ganon is, you guessed it, he's being imprisoned because that's the war. Part of the mural is obstructed, but don't worry about it. I'm not going to talk about it. Zelda and Link continue to go deeper into these ruins underneath the castle, and they come across Ganondorf's mummified body being held in place by a teal phantom hand. There's also a Magatama above Ganon, which is a comma-shaped bead used as a religious and ceremonial object throughout Japanese history, but it dates back to like 1000 BCE. Here, they're called the Sacred Stones. Mummy Ganon. That sounds so funny. Mommy Ganon. I mean, he kind of is. That rack. Mummy Ganon wakes up and he just attacks. He is ready to fight in spite of being really not well. He destroys the Master Sword and tears off Link's right arm. He also causes the upheaval, which just explodes a bunch of earth out of the ground. The castle grounds shoot up. So there's this giant rock that's holding the castle on a little floating island above the surface. So you can't actually get to the castle. And then a bunch of chasms open up all around the map, leading to an underground. Also, the sky opens up, revealing some sky islands. Whether or not this is connected to the upheaval, I'll leave that for you guys to argue about down below. Like, comment, subscribe. Around the castle and everywhere these chasms have opened up, they're covered in gloom, which is a malevolent goo that saps your health if you step in it. I really wish they called it something else that wasn't gloom. I think that's a bad name for it. It's just not very cool. Oh, I stepped in the gloom. It's just kind of a funny word. Gloom. This big shift in the land also causes an earthquake where they are. We don't really know what happens to Ganon, but he's alive now. Link and Zelda both fall. The Sacred Stone goes to Zelda and she disappears in glowing golden light. And I don't remember honestly what happens to Link. He falls and then he wakes up in an island in the sky with a new right arm. We are in this sky archipelago now, and the beginning of the game plays very similarly to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, you started out on the Great Plateau. You talk to the Phantom King of Hyrule. In Breath of the Wild, it's Zelda's father. In Tears of the Kingdom, we talk to Rauru, who is the Zonai King. Also, Rauru, deep cut reference to Ocarina of Time, because he is the Sage of Light, and also Kaepora Gaebora. I don't know why that man can transform into an owl, but I'm not here to question. Rauru instructs you to go to all of these shrines. That's where you get the new powers that are introduced in this game. Hi, Editor Me here. Lol, I completely forgot to mention that Link has a new right arm and it comes from Rauru. Like, Rauru sealed Ganon with his own arm, sacrificed his arm, and then when Link lost his arm, that's the new arm he got. Oopsie. Anyways, back to the video. After completing them, Link goes to the Temple of Time, another Ocarina of Time reference. He almost dies pushing a door open because it saps your health, and if you don't have enough hearts, it won't open, so that's why you have to complete all of the shrines in order to move on. Behind the door, the Temple of Time is like a stupid building because it's just like a big room with a door, and then there's like a diving board. So at the end of this like diving board is an orb of light, and Link goes and he like touches it, and I think he can feel that Zelda has something to do with it, and he still has the damaged Master Sword, so he puts it in the glowing light, and then the Master Sword disappears, the glowing light disappears. We don't know where it went. He also like hears Zelda for like a split second, so I think it's implied that he knows the sword has gone to wherever she is, but at the time we don't know where she is. And then Link jumps down into the world. We descend near Hyrule Castle. Outside, an encampment is formed called Lookout Landing, and it's being led by Pura, who is a big researcher from the first game. All of the Sheikah technology from Breath of the Wild is gone. I do not know where it went, but they've been building new Sheikah technology. The running theory that I like is that they knew the tech could get corrupted by Ganon, so they had to dismantle it all. I agree with that theory, but I wish the game actually said why all that shit's gone. Instead of the Sheikah slate from the first game, we have the Pura pad, And both of them do the same thing, but I think Purapad is a worse name. Like the Sheikah Slate is kind of cool. Even though it is a switch, it makes it feel like he's holding something that's supposed to be ancient. Whereas like every time I think of Purapad, I'm like, oh, Link's a tablet baby. He's getting out the iPad. He's going to watch some Cocomelon, some Bluey. We talk to Pura and she tells us that we have to go to each major village and figure out what's going on there for them. So same as in the first game, we go to each place. Instead of the champions that the first game has, Tears of the Kingdom has sages, but they function very similarly. I thought that the game was also going to only highlight new characters because in Breath of the Wild, when we go visit the Rito, visit the Zora, the Goron, the Gerudo, we meet someone who has a connection to one of the champions from 100 years ago. The point of that game is connecting a more recent past with the present, whereas Tears of the Kingdom is about connecting a much more ancient past with the present. I went to the Rito village first to figure out what was going on. And the character we follow here is Tulin, who was in Breath of the Wild, but he was like a baby. And there's been like a sizable time skip between the two games. So he's like a youngin' now. He's a child warrior. But I thought we were introducing some new characters into the mix specifically because Teba wasn't the one that we follow. Because in Breath of the Wild, he's our link to the Rito village and the Rito champion Rivali. Anyways, Tulin is the focus character here. I thought that's what they were going to do for each of the villages, you know, show us some new characters, and also, like, if they ever make a Hyrule Warriors 2, it's an easy way to pad out the roster. Like I said earlier, the Rito are dealing with an unbearable eternal winter, and the snow is coming from the sky. So we have to go up there and figure out what's going on. There's like a pirate ship in the sky that's based on a Rito folktale that no one believes is real, but it's real because the ship is in the sky. The ship is being protected by a giant storm, so the Rito can't just like fly into it. They have to be able to get over top of it and dive down into the eye of the storm so that they don't get like messed up. Tulin has the power to shoot wind, so it's decided that he's going to be the one who goes up there with Link. So they do that. They dive down into this hurricane. It's honestly really gorgeous. Kudos to the beginning of this game because it's visually very, very impressive. We beat the temple in a grand battle where we're gliding up and down and we're shooting this like long bat frozen demon. After they beat the boss, a sacred stone emerges and Tulin officially becomes the Wind Sage after Link and Tulin enter this liminal space and talk to the ancient Wind Sage. And he gives them some details on the imprisoning war. This same thing happens in literally each location. Like the same scene plays every time we beat the boss and we touch a sacred stone and unlock a new sage. After wrapping the Rito storyline, I went to Zora's domain where we are reunited with fan favorite Shark Hottie Sidon, and we meet his fiancée Yona, which is triggering if you're at all like a near replicant fan. I thought Yona was going to be the water sage because of Tulin. Like, we're being introduced to this new character, but it does end up being Sidon, which works, but absolutely disrupts the part of my brain that enjoys patterns. There's sludge coming out of the sky, and it's polluting the Zora waters, so the fish people can't swim, and as you can probably guess, that's a problem. The girlies are dying. Similar to the Rito, it's another quest of like following some ancient lore. In this case, it's some ruins that are under the water that if you press a button, it unlocks a waterfall into the sky, and that's how we get to the water temple. Also, in the Zora Sky Islands and in some other parts of the sky as well, the air is really light, so Link is like moon jumping everywhere. It was kind of cool. Anyways, the game is power scaled in such a way that doing this part of the game too early is kind of challenging because the enemies are all a tier up from where you probably are, given the time that you've had to like collect resources and whatnot. It was really difficult to deal with. I kept on getting one-shotted by enemies, and it was kind of frustrating and demoralizing for a little bit there. I was like, oh my god, I don't know what to do. I told Sidon to go kick rocks, and I left to go solve the Goron drug crisis, ? The Gorons are eating marble rock roast, which sounds delicious. But it's evil food because it like trances them into wanting more rock roast. The people are not working. They're using underhanded methods to get more of this food so that they can get their next fix. It's like kind of a drug metaphor. I don't think it translates perfectly, but I do think it's the oddest problem scenario that they introduced. Yunobo has also become this kind of mafia boss, which is such a stark contrast to who he is in the first game, but also he's wearing this like luchador kind of mask, and it's controlling him. So Link fights Yunobo, the mask breaks, a version of Zelda appears, and this happens several times throughout the game where she kind of just like appears really far away from you, but walks in the opposite direction from where you are, and then like suddenly disappears behind a pillar or something. Also, like everywhere you go in Hyrule where there's a side quest, everyone is like, Zelda was here and she told us to not do XYZ, or she gave us this thing, or I saw her but she was walking around with a monster and it was kind of weird. Like that's the entirety of what Zelda is up to, so it's very confusing. Spoiler alert, Zelda has traveled back in time. So I thought these were like after image Zeldas of things that she did in the past. Like I thought we were maybe accidentally following a journey that she's already done because she explored all these places, but history is repeating itself. Whatever. That was kind of my supposition at the time. That is not what is going on with Phantom Zelda. Link and Yunobo go to the top of Death Mountain and jump into the volcano because it's inactive. The underground is really hot though. In the depths, that's what I should be calling it. The depths is what the underground area is called. Down there is the ancient fire temple. Link and Yunobo solve all these rail cart problems and they fight the marbled Gohma. I don't know how to pronounce it. Again, a classic Zelda boss. This spider is in almost every single iteration of the game. Same stuff happens. We beat the boss. We get the sacred stone. We're treated to a flashback. Yunobo is now the Sage of Fire. We move on. I circled back to Sidon in the sky and solved the water temple. The water temple was kind of hard. I was going through it. I genuinely was like stuck in a lot of spots. And I do have to commend the design of the game. I tried really hard to solve things on my own, and unless I was really stuck on something or like didn't figure it out within a certain amount of time or a certain amount of attempts, that was when I was looking at walkthroughs. And every time I did look at a solution from the walkthrough, I was always like, okay, nothing in this game is actually like nonsense. I was just like overthinking it or underthinking it. But all the solutions are available. You just need to be looking for them. Anyways, we solve this temple, we purify the water, and then we fight this enemy called Mukdorok, which is an Octorok reference, which is like a basic mob enemy in almost every Zelda game. And I think it's the worst Zelda boss design of all time. Controversial yet brave, I know. But it's true. This boss fight sucks. I think, pro tip, you need to fuse an opal magic rod because it's much easier to use that than it is to wait for Sidon's magic water rush. That sounds like a very fun ride. Anyways, Sidon becomes the water sage. Lastly, I went to the Gerudo Desert where the weather was really consistent. I feel like in Breath of the Wild, it was constantly just hot unless it was nighttime. In Tears of the Kingdom, I was confused. Sometimes it was hot, sometimes it was cold. I was like, make a decision. Also, there's no Fem Link outfit. It's a tragedy and an attack on me, personally. The Gerudo are going through it. It's very apocalyptic. Gerudo Town has been ransacked. There are these zombie skeletons everywhere. They're hiding in an underground bunker. It was a surprisingly well thought out approach to what a zombie apocalypse might look like in a contained fantasy setting. It really worked for me. I was afraid. We come across Riju while she's perfecting her lightning strike aim, and for some reason, Link shooting an arrow helps her with her aim. It doesn't really make sense, but it's okay. The Gibdo, which are the skeleton bug people, they're resistant to physical attacks, but they're weak to magic. So if you use magic on them, like let's say a big lightning strike, then you can start hitting them with your weapon and they're really fragile. So Riju's lightning is instrumental. There's a segment where we defend the town against a Gibdo attack, then Link goes into the desert and solves this light beam puzzle, which causes an ancient Gerudo temple, the lightning temple, to emerge from the sand. In there, we solve some more light puzzles, we shoot some things with lightning, and then we fight the Gibdo Queen, which is honestly such an insufferable boss fight. Like, there are pillars of light that shine through, because for some reason, these particular pillars of light also weaken the Gibdo and like expose their vulnerability. So there's that, and you can also use magic to weaken the Gibdo Queen. But I just found the boss fight like really challenging. The Queen is really strong, and also she has this tornado attack that just like blocks arrows, and unless you can like run around it fast enough, you can't really do anything. I never figured out what the best approach is for this boss fight. I really took the slow and steady wins the race route. It took me forever. Riju becomes the Lightning Sage. Life goes on. In the meantime, depending on how you're playing the game, Link has been collecting the dragon tears, and we pieced together that Zelda has gone back in time at the beginning of the game. For where I was at, I had already completed this plot thread, but Link has been going around, and you see these geoglyphs throughout the game. They're visible in the day, but they're more visible at night. They're kind of like what I imagine a very fierce crop circle would look like, because they're just these glowing, land sprawling pieces of artwork that are etched into the ground. So you go to each of them and you collect dragon tears, and the dragon tears unlock one of Zelda's memories. At the beginning of the game, one of the abilities that we get is called recall or recall. I feel like you could use that word interchangeably for what this ability is, because it kind of means both things. But it's the time power that we get from Zelda, because to recall is to bring something back, and one of the power's abilities is to send an object back through time, but also we're using it to recall, literally, these memories so that we can figure out what happened to Zelda. I just thought it was really intelligent. Anyways, we see that Zelda has gone back in time. She's met with Sonia and Rauru, who are the first king and queen of Hyrule. As discussed, Rauru is a Zonai. Zelda meets some other Zonai people, specifically his sister Minoru. Sonia is a Sage of Time, and Rauru is technically the Sage of Light, but he's called the King of Light instead, probably because he's you guessed it, a king. And they trust Zelda immediately because they can tell that she has both of their magic in her, so they know that she is their descendant who has traveled back in time. They know that pretty much instantly. From the initial trailers, I kind of thought that Sonia was going to be a representation of Hylia, who is the capital G goddess of expanded Zelda lore. I'm sure if they do a third Breath of the Wild installment, they'll probably tackle Hylia and the goddesses, but who's to say? I like that the dragon tears replaced the memories from Breath of the Wild, because in Breath of the Wild, you had to be fucking Trevor Rainbolt and find all these locations in this game based on pictures. So the dragon tears are much more of a gimme. The memories show Zelda building these relationships, but it also shows the imprisoning war. We see Ganondorf killing Sonia and getting sealed by Rauru. Zelda meets Minoru, who is a wildly underdeveloped and underutilized character. I kind of thought that Minoru would have a whole plot line detailing her becoming the progenitor of the Sheikah clan, because she's a wickedly intelligent inventor, and the Sheikah are responsible for all of the ancient technology that's in Breath of the Wild, and Minoru is pretty much solely responsible for all of the ancient technology that we see in Tears of the Kingdom. So I just thought it would be natural for there to be a link there, but it's not. In all of these flashbacks, we see Rauru with 6 sages, meaning that there are 7 sages in total, because Rauru is technically part of that group. So we have 4 elemental sages from this era who we've met. Minoru is the Sage of Spirit, Sonia is the Sage of Time, Rauru is the Sage of Light. Sonia dies before participating in the big imprisoning battle, so Zelda is there as a sage instead. This also mimics how Ocarina of Time had 7 sages. The structure of the game implies that once we collect the 4 sages in present day, we're done, but it's obvious that it shouldn't be finished there. In an unsurprising twist, we have to go find the 5th sage, but that's it. No 6th or 7th, just the 5th one, and then that's where they draw the line. It's odd to me that Link isn't confirmed to be a sage, even though he has Rauru's arm, and that Zelda isn't present even though she's the Sage of Time. So, time to talk about my favorite character for normal reasons. Ew. This is Taro, one of the game's new hotties. So, in Kakariko Village, kind of depicted behind him here, you can kind of see. Kakariko Village is where the Sheikah reside. There are these huge ring ruins, and the only part of the game that you can't physically go to is the big ring. And I tried. I climbed the big mountain next to it. I tried approaching it from the opposite side. I dove down, and it doesn't matter. You can be literally full speed, about to go splat on the ground. The NPC will stop you midair and be like, you can't be over there. You're not supposed to be here. This one NPC will stop you in spite of the laws of physics. You will not go near this ring. You are not to approach it because evil fake Zelda said you can't go there. Also, side note, by this point, we've learned that maybe fake, possibly ghost Zelda that's been running around and ruining lives. Surprise, it's not Zelda. It's Ganondorf doing a silly little illusion. So where is Zelda? The objective of the game, the main quest line, the action of the story is find Princess Zelda. We know she has the Master Sword. We know that she went to the past, but we don't know where she is. So when we have to go find the fifth sage, Pura is like, everyone's spread out. There must be a major ruin that we haven't touched yet. And at that point in the game, I was like, oh my god, it's the ring. It's the fucking ring. It's the ring that we weren't allowed to touch. Anyways, we figure out what is going on with these ruins. And then we go to Faron Woods. And there's some river lore stuff where we get this armor, and there's a lightning strike that hits some dragon statues, and there's a big storm cloud in the sky that disappears. That's like the other place that the game bars us from going because we can't get through the storm cloud. We go up to these new storm islands. We find a mask that shoots out a beam of light that takes us to one place on the ground, that takes us to another place underground. We're also hearing Minoru's voice throughout this, so we know that we're going to re-encounter her in some way as the Sage of Spirit. And once we get underground, we have to build a robot. Listen, it makes sense. It makes sense. I can't say that the writing doesn't track. Minoru is the Sage of Spirit. Her only power is that she can separate spirit from body. So her body won't survive, but her spirit can survive eternally. And she is an expert inventor who has created all of these Zonai artifices. She loves to make a machine. So it fully makes sense. I do not have to suspend my disbelief in the slightest to know that the game is telling me that we're going to have to find a new place to house Minoru's soul. And what better place than a robot, because it's thematically tied to her. In spite of the fact that the plot thread is, it's resolved. I just explained it. It's dumb and cheesy as hell. I hated the robot so much. It controls really terribly. The fact that the button mapping of the robot is different from Link is like just so rough. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't believe they did that to me. They robbed us of a plot line of someone else becoming the Sage of Spirit. Also, this robot felt like a subtle nod to failed Nintendo franchise ARMS. Like, we literally fight another robot in a boxing ring. It's ARMS, but slow and stupid. I just think Minoru was wasted potential. I would say the biggest opportunity of having Minoru still be the fifth sage and re-enter the narrative in present day after we've resolved a lot of issues would be so that she can give extra context and information from the past that we don't know, because we barely see her perspective from the memories, but we barely talk to her in present day, so she doesn't really offer that much. Like, she really gets no development, and all the game needed to do was let her speak. Like, just the bare minimum. Like, if we had just seen a new perspective, or maybe we learned about what Minoru's life was like after Zelda was out of the picture. Just give me something. Like, Minoru truly gets dust for dessert. She gets nothing. She could not be in this game, and it wouldn't change. I also think, especially because they didn't do anything with Minoru, I think that this was a missed opportunity to have a Sheikah person become the fifth sage. A passing of the torch could have been really cool, especially given the implication that Minoru has not been able to rest for over 10,000 years or whatever. Like, maybe it'd be nice for her life to be over. I think it makes the most sense for the new Sage of Spirit to be Pura, because she's the lead inventor of this generation. And also, she, in the first game, was like screwing around with some age reversing magic. So she's been able to make her body last for a lot longer. She's well over 100 years old. So it kind of mirrors Minoru in some ways, in that she has like a longer lifespan. And instead of just making her soul last longer, which she has already done, she has also been able to make her body last longer. So there's not that like separation of body and spirit. It should have been her. Or if we want to do a crazy out of left field plotline, give it to someone from the Yiga. Humanize a Yiga clan member. That would have been insane, but it would have been really interesting. So we have the 5 sages. We're probably ready to fight Ganondorf, but we don't have the Master Sword. And the question remains, where is Zelda? Zelda in the past learns that if she eats her sacred stone, she can gain a lot of power and she becomes immortal. So Zelda could return to present day because she could live long enough to meet Link again in the future. But the con is that she would become a dragon and lose her humanity. Like, she wouldn't really be herself anymore. Do you see where I'm headed? After losing to Ganondorf, Sonia and Rauru have died for the cause, and Zelda is at a loss for what to do. Minoru is like, girl, don't do it. There's no coming back from this. But Zelda is a little peckish. She needs a little snack, a little pick-me-up. So she eats the sacred stone. And in the best scene of the game, for a split second, it's like a very gorgeous musical score, and then it just stops. And Zelda looks up, eyes wide open, and her huge anime eyes, just the whites of them turn like purple and blue, and she screams, and then she starts like floating up into the sky, and she becomes a dragon as the sages watch from a nearby hill. The Master Sword is also lodged in her forehead, so her light magic can restore it over time, and Dragon Zelda cries as she soars into the sky and loses herself, hence the Tears of the Kingdom. I don't know why the game isn't called the Tears of the Dragon. Maybe that's too on the nose. Also, I mean this in a really nice way. Zelda becomes kind of an ugly dragon. Like, I hate the way she looks. I think the mix of the yellow and the light blue for some reason doesn't work for me. Also, she's very much giving psychedelic seahorse, which that sounds so fun, but this is not the vibe. All in all, though, not to deflate from the moment, this scene like genuinely made me upset. If you're going to play this game at all, it's for this scene. It was just so good. You unlock it after you've scoured the land for all of the dragon tears, and then Zelda, as the dragon, appears and she sheds another tear in another area. And once you go get that one, that's when you see the dragon transformation scene. And once you flip back to the present after the scene, Link is like surrounded by these silent princesses, which are a flower that's metaphorically tied to Zelda, even though they like technically don't have anything to do with her. We then have to skydive onto the back of the light dragon in order to pull the Master Sword from her forehead. After some like thrashing around, Link is able to pull the Master Sword, and there's this beautiful scene where she flies all the way up into the heavens, and Link is just like standing there, and it's a very triumphant moment. This was a great segment of game. Honestly, it was crazy. Now we have the Master Sword, we have the sages, we have to go kill Ganondorf. But where could he possibly be? Probably in the chasm right underneath the castle, because that's where we found him at the beginning of the game. So we venture deep, deep down through the castle ruins. We come across the murals that Link and Zelda saw at the beginning of the game, and now that we're equipped to smash rocks, Link can uncover the parts that were obscured at the beginning, and he sees that the last two parts of the mural prophecy are Zelda becoming the dragon. We continue to go down, and we face off against Ganondorf. This boss fight was honestly so good, so tense. I was afraid for my life. I was Link in that moment. I was truly role-playing. Once you get the timing down, though, the fight is not that hard. I struggled specifically with knowing how to dodge the sword, but if you pay attention to the angle of his arm, you can tell whether he's gonna slash downwards or sideways. I also went into this fight really unprepared. I barely cooked any meals, so I didn't have enough food to restore my health. Also, Ganon's attacks inflict you with doom, which block out your heart gauge, and unless you have specific ingredients to restore it, you're kind of hooped. Like, your health is permanently down. You can't go back from that. So that was a cool way of imbuing the fight with some more stakes, too. I died during this fight a few times, and like I said, I didn't have any food. So my only recourse was to get good. And get good I got. Because, like, my fourth time, I think, on this fight, I barely lost any health. Like, I knew the patterns by then, and it was much easier. After we beat him, Ganondorf is also in the mood for dinner, kind of like Zelda was. And he eats the sacred stone that he has, and he turns into like a huge dragon. I think it's wild that Ganondorf becomes like massive and is like spewing evil energy, and Zelda becomes kind of like a dainty like little dragon. Ganon also becomes a seahorse freak dragon, so at least they're comparable in that way. The game's pace is pretty good. It's kind of slow, but I think that's a function of having to go places and explore, and this is a game where you're supposed to get sidetracked along the way to do other things. I did think that the descent under the castle to fight Ganondorf happened like really fast, probably because I finished the Master Sword stuff earlier, and I think that's kind of intended for you to finish after you get Minoru. Anyways, I just wasn't expecting the game to wrap as fast as it did, and I didn't think it would be over after this like really tense one-on-one fight. And then there's a much easier grand battle in the sky where you ride Dragon Zelda up and then jump off of her and dive onto Dragon Ganon and like hit him a little bit. The game is quite long. I played for about 70 hours, and I skipped a lot of stuff. Like, I did not find everything. I did majority of the side quests, but I didn't do them all. Like, there's still more for me to do. But I think this game needed a third act, because after beating Ganondorf, you're done. Act 1 ends after we find the 4 elemental sages, go to the castle, find out that Zelda isn't Zelda, and we face off with the Phantom Ganons. That's Act 1. Act 2 follows the search for the 5th sage, obtaining the Master Sword, figuring out what happened to Zelda, and descending under Hyrule to face Ganondorf in his hot Gerudo form. We beat Ganon, and afterwards, the spirit of Rauru and Sonia appear behind Link, and they restore Zelda back to human form. Link and Zelda have this beautiful moment during the sunset where they're falling from the sky, and Link has to dive faster to catch up with Zelda, and you have to hold X down so that he can like reach out and grab for her hand, and then they fall down into this lake together. It's gorgeous. And they have this little scene after where she talks and she's just like so happy to be back. It's cute. It's really cute. It's a good scene. But the game should not have ended here. This is my proposed Act 3. So the game plays pretty much exactly the same up until we beat human Ganondorf. Nothing really changes, except either it's a scripted loss for that fight and we get ported out some other way, or maybe we do best him in combat, but that's somehow like the combat has to stop. For whatever reason, the fight between Link and Ganondorf ends in phase 1 of the actual final boss fight of the game. Act 3 should be about Link, because we follow Link, and obviously he's the main character, but we don't know anything about him. Link is the hero, like capital T, capital H, the hero. In a literary sense, that's obvious because he's the character that we're following, but in the grand Zelda cinematic universe, Link is a reincarnation of an ancient hero who plays a different role in each Zelda game. Typically, this original hero has the Triforce of Courage, and that's what makes each incarnation the hero. They have the magic triangle and the indigo sword. In Breath of the Wild lore, there is a specific ancient hero who may or may not, but is probably a Zonai warrior who served the Kingdom of Hyrule. Link should have to go on his own personal quest about his own lineage, especially in relation to the ancient hero, and it should have to do with Rauru. Maybe Link should solve a problem that has to do with himself and not just go around and be the human savior for all of these like non-human people, except for the Gerudo. They're human, but you know what I mean. This plot thread should end with Link becoming the current Sage of Light. It doesn't make sense that Link isn't a sage. He should obtain some sort of light power. Maybe he can shoot the big laser that we see Rauru shoot in one of the memories, and he should be able to use it in tandem with Zelda so that they can resonate and their powers become stronger together, and that should be what deals the final blow to Ganon. In Breath of the Wild, Link is selected as the Hylian champion, so he's part of the group of important people from that game. In Tears of the Kingdom, it's great that he has the magic god arm, but Link has no actual distinction as a member of the group. Like, he leads the sages, but he isn't a sage himself, and he's not really endowed with a lot of importance. Like, normally there's a chosen one fantasy here, and I feel like Link doesn't really get that treatment, which I just find kind of odd, because it's right there. It's just baffling to me that they didn't have 7 sages, so Link should go on this journey and be awakened as the 6th sage. Maybe he has to undergo some sort of like royal Zonai trial that maybe Rauru had to do. Then we can develop both characters at the same time. Double your pleasure, double your fun. Link's reward for completing this trial should be the Triforce of Courage. The Triforce is... I don't even know what the Triforce is. It's magic. It's a set of 3 triangles that are split between 3 people, and if you have all pieces of the Triforce, you can do great things. The Triforce is like the main MacGuffin magical item in every other Zelda game, but for some reason, Breath of the Wild MCU has not tackled the Triforce, and I think it should have been here. Maybe the Lightning Dragon Farosh is involved somehow, since the Faron region is connected to the Zonai, and there are entirely new implications now that we know that dragons were originally people. I thought that we were going to explore who the dragons were initially too, but we don't get any of that. This trial should probably happen at the Temple of Time that's in the sky. Maybe the Temple of Time is a resting place for Sonia, so we could also get a little bit more exposition on her and figure out what's her deal. Rauru's spirit could act as a guide and, you know, tell us a little bit more about her. I think the Temple of Time wasn't utilized to its fullest potential. It would have been cool to like go back there and unlock some sort of secret room so it could serve as something more than just like an open building that keeps us in the sky for the tutorial at the beginning. It could also make sense too because light and time are kind of intertwined because Rauru and Sonia were married. I feel like it could work. Now that Link has new power and there's nothing they can do about the Time Sage because Zelda exists, but she's bound to her dragon form, Ganon should feel threatened in some way. Because even though he defeated Rauru and the sages in the past, he has to have some sort of weakness or shortcoming here. And that fear has to be greater than Link just beating him in a fight, right? Like, Link has to be able to kill him, and Ganondorf should know that. Ganondorf needs a bigger, better reason to draconify himself, you know? I would assume that Link becoming a sage with a Triforce would do the trick. Ganondorf is already really powerful. In my headcanon, he could probably already have the Triforce of Power, and that's how he defeated Rauru at the beginning. Ganon, for whatever reason, has a Triforce of Power, and now Link has become indisputably his equal. Once Ganon becomes the dragon, the final fight is happening. Like, it's go time, it's now. This fight probably happens in Hyrule Field because these big, grand battles usually take place in big open spaces where not a lot of people are, you know, so you can feel less bad. You're not too concerned about accidental collateral. Ganondorf is this massive dragon. Link is trying to fight him, but maybe things aren't working. That's what I thought was going to happen in the actual final fight. I don't think my brain could just process that I was actually at the end of the game. I genuinely fully thought it was going to be a fake out fight with a scripted loss. I think maybe that's why I was surprised that I was at the end, because it just didn't feel like that's where we were going. I fully believed that there would be more game. Anyways, picture it. We're fighting. Maybe there's a big war. Maybe other side characters who we've met along the way have mobilized, and they're helping us in the fight against Ganon as well. Link is using his newfound light power to shoot some lasers, and maybe because he's the leader, he has this like extra ability. Maybe it's tied to his Triforce of Power. He can like amplify the other sages. Tulin is whipping up some hurricanes. Yunobo is spinning up lava. Sidon is summoning torrents of water, and Riju is calling down a storm. I don't know what Pura is doing. Maybe she's building some turrets. Maybe she's like, fast manufacturing some machines that are doing a lot. Maybe they're more supportive, or like they're traps or something like that. She's doing something. The fight of a lifetime is happening. Like, it's going down now, and things aren't working. Maybe they're not really making a dent on Ganon. Enter Zelda, still in her light dragon form, except now that Link and Ganon have activated their respective Triforce pieces, we see a flashback. Zelda and Sonia are having a conversation. In my mind, it either takes place at the gazebo, or they're in some like quaint waterfall grassy space with some like butterflies and like fireflies and stuff, but it's still daytime. It's just like particularly beautiful. Zelda and Sonia are having a conversation about their lineage. They're talking about queenhood, and they're talking about the mother goddess Hylia, who, for our intents and purposes, is the progenitor of light and is the earliest the history goes. Hylia has 3 daughters, Din, Faror, and Nehru. Din forged the earth from fire, Faror breathed life into the planet, and Nehru's wisdom brought order to the world. This is also an Ocarina of Time reference, because that's the creation story from that game. These goddesses were revered in ancient times and have regions named after them in their honor, and Sonia has this family heirloom that has served her as queen, and it's Nehru's crest. It's an item believed to contain all sorts of knowledge. Maybe it gives her some wisdom, it guides her along her way, it has helpful advice. I think she's probably a successful queen without it, but there's some sort of magical component to this device that maybe we don't know about. Either during Sonia's death scene or after Ganon kills her, Zelda is bequeathed Nehru's crest, and it stays with her after she's become a dragon. I know that's like kind of a juicy cutscene to happen in the middle of a huge fight, but please walk with me. We cut back to the boss fight. We're focused on Zelda. Nehru's crest, once thought to be this benign trinket, actually houses the Triforce of Wisdom, and it awakens during the battle. Maybe it resonates with the other 2 Triforce pieces, and Zelda regains her humanity in dragon form, so she's able to be in control of herself. And she is going to town. She's reversing time. She's shooting lasers like Link. She's popping off. I think something similar happens, but instead of like Link jumping off and diving and stuff, you should be able to control Dragon Zelda, and like simultaneously it becomes like a laser kind of gun game at this point. You're just shooting Ganon. So after killing Ganondorf, ridding the world of his evil, I have 2 proposals for Zelda becoming human again. My first one is that in this final fight, she unlocks the Triforce of Wisdom. She is the queen card. You want to be the queen card. She's full queen goddess. She has ascended. After the fight, she's able to use her Triforce of Wisdom in tandem with her Time Sage powers, and she's able to regain her human form. She's able to recall that. That's option 1. She's able to rewrite herself into being human again. Before getting into option 2, I want to go through what the true ending of Tears of the Kingdom is, because it's, in my opinion, stupid. And I'm not talking about the ending with Link and Zelda falling out of the sky. That's gorgeous and perfect. In spite of the fact that the game should continue, beyond that, I love that ending. But the post-credit scene is boring. Like, I honestly don't see it as a worthy reward for completing a certain task within the game. Like, it's literally just a cutscene of them in the sky where they're all talking, and then Minoru's soul passes on. Like, I guess it's kind of nice that her soul is able to pass on because she's resolved this centuries-long mission, but I don't think it's worth it. Like, I really don't care. I think, like, right after defeating Ganon, the game should end with the pieces of the Triforce coming back together and they ascend and evaporate into the sky. But the important part is that they restore the land. Like, Hyrule Castle goes back to being in the ground, the chasms close up, the gloom disappears, the world is once again at peace. Then we should roll credits. The true post-credits scene should be obtainable after Link completes all 152 shrines that are in the game, because in each shrine you obtain an orb of light, and every time you get one, there's a visual cue where a little bit of like gloom miasma kind of evaporates off of Link, so it looks like he's being healed. With all of the pieces of light reunited, that's when Sonia's spirit should reappear, because I don't think it makes sense that Sonia and Rauru just like randomly show up and turn Zelda back into a human. Because I'm like, where did Sonia come from? Also, why can't they just show up the whole time? Like, why now is my question. So I think narratively, Sonia should have a reason to reappear. And if her and Rauru can combine their powers, then maybe instead of Zelda using the wisdom to recode herself, they can still have that moment where they're involved in turning Zelda back into a human, and then their souls pass on. Also, I think it would be cool if, like, Zelda could shift back and forth between being human and dragon. That's the end of the game. I think this as a secret ending would be a better reward for players who wanted to see as much of the game as possible. Like, you really finish the game and now you're treated to Zelda being a human again, as opposed to just like getting the one memory that isn't part of the main storyline, just so we can get a scene focused on Minoru that doesn't do anything. Like, that's kind of unsatisfying for me. Completing the shrines could also serve as like a post-game task. So like, for example, you beat the game as normal, but if you don't have all of the shrines completed, now you have a post-game to explore, and there could have been an opportunity for more side quests in that way too. And then once you get all the orbs, you return to a certain spot and now Zelda's human again. That also could have been an option. Kind of like how God of War Ragnarok's story finishes, but there's still kind of an extended epilogue. Anyways, that's my proposed ending, and the fun part about it is that it could be a whole other game. On to the side stuff. I'll try to be brief because this video is certainly too long already. I need to go to bed. I enjoy the pen quest line. I don't really consider myself a furry, but that's a hot pelican. That's a hot pelican, man. The depths exist. I kind of didn't like the depths. I don't think they were bad. I think they were well designed, and I was like scared and nervous when I was underground because there's no light, and I also didn't know how to throw things until embarrassingly late into the playthrough. But it was a bit frustrating at times, just struggling to navigate down there. I enjoyed the Hateno Village questline, just like going around, figuring out what's going on with this mayoral election and having it resolve, embracing tradition and modernity, and understanding that there can be reconciliation between the two, solving the Lorellan Village pirate problem, and restoring all these buildings with the building company from the first game. The last thing I want to do with this video is review my bingo card that I made in this video, just to see how badly I missed the mark, honestly. Okay, Sidon, I think that's a check. That's in the game. Dix's boats, those were in the game. No Twilight Zone. I'm upset, but I was right. That's a check. Gerudo divorce. I don't think that was a plot point. I think Ronson and Johnson, I don't remember their names. They were having a little bit of struggle as they were concerned about their daughter, and they were a little too focused on work to be with each other. But I don't think that counts as divorce. There was no Uku reference, but there was a Poe reference. That's specifically Twilight Princess, but that doesn't count. Not a point. Master Sword gets stolen. You know what? I'm going to say that that's a check because it gets destroyed and then we put it in a beam of light and we technically don't know where it goes. Link really said, trust the process. So I'm going to say that that counts. No motorcycle, that counts. Skeleton guy is girly pop. Oh, I meant that about Ganon. I mean, he's hot. but he's not very girly pop. Doesn't count. Post credits Twilight Mirror. No, this game isn't cool enough. Ganon won't be hot. I've never been so happy to be wrong in my life. Skyward Sword Dragon Babies. No, this was really specific. So there weren't Skyward Sword Dragon babies, but there was a baby dragon in Zelda. Half points. Slink, which is a stupid Kingdom Hearts joke. I don't think there was an evil Link. There was an evil Zelda. Oh, if I did Zeldix, Deslax, Dexlaz, Desclax. If I had done evil Zelda, evil nobody alternate Zelda, that would have been a check. Goron underrepresentation. Honestly, sure, because I think their questline was the worst. I'm going to check that. Another new race. It was just the Zonai. I think what I thought was there was going to be a second alternate race, kind of like an antithesis to the Zonai that was being introduced, but that never happened. Zelda does get sidelined. Even though the plot follows Zelda, she does get sidelined. Some people thought that Zelda was going to be playable in this one. I, at the very least, thought that Zelda was going to be with us for majority of the journey, but she's gone. She's out of there. Link, Zelda, Dragon Leader throuple. No, that's not a check. More fairy fountains. We were robbed. Someone commented on my bingo video and was like, they should have skinny twink fairies in the sky and like big bear fairies in the underground. And I literally couldn't agree more. I'm so married to that now. I really wish that's what we got. We did not get more fairy fountains. We did get the big scary Poe statues underground. Maybe that's kind of adjacent. 20 million stupid seeds, check. Link speaks, no, not a check. Missed opportunity. Hand-to-hand combat, we did not get. Game of Thrones. I think if we focused more on the past, and especially why Ganondorf was able to lead the Gerudo, but one of the Gerudo was convinced enough to defect and become the Sage of Lightning and support Rauru. I think if we really got a specific look at the Hylian Gerudo conflict, then maybe it could have been Game of Thrones-y. But no. No cross-dressing. That one, the CC hat, that doesn't count. I'm going to check that. I think that counts. The islands will be boring. Kind of, but some of them were cool. They were kind of samey, was my issue. Like, they were kind of repetitive. There was a reuse of, like, assets and concept between the islands. So, half points for that. I love how I just, like, skipped over Sheik and now I'm flipping back to it. I think I might have ADHD, but I really don't know. We did not get Sheik. There was a fake Zelda in this game, but not a Sheik-esque fake Zelda. So, thank you for reviewing my bingo. This video is going to be way too long. If you're still here, you should subscribe. You know if you like me or not. So that's it for this video. I've talked too long. Thank you so much for watching. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, leave a comment down below and we can perhaps discuss. I also just want to say a big thank you. I feel like the only people who are sitting here at the end are like people who are interested in me as a creator as well as my content. I just want to say a big thank you. Since we surpassed 500 subscribers, I am part of the YouTube Partner Program, but with conditions, because they changed it. They changed it to make it easier to get into the Partner Program in some countries. So I'm not making AdSense money on any of my videos. I don't even know if ads are served on my videos because my channel is so small, but I am technically approved and like in the partner program. But the only thing right now that is a source of revenue on my channel is if people leave a tip, which I don't expect from anybody, but the option is there. So a big thank you to everyone who supported my channel. I am quite excited. And I also can't wait to reach 1,000 subscribers because that's literally all I need to get. And then this could at least be like a passive source of income and I could buy like a good microphone and a camera. Anyways, I need to go to bed now. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.